have 6, 10, and 14, which are some things about whole numbers, odd and even whole numbers. So they seem to have like some command of that, or at least you have enough kids that could support some of the other students that know that stuff. Individual students, we've got a few who scored very high on the assessment and a few who scored very low. Again, keeping in mind it's a diagnostic, right? So you can't expect them necessarily to know this material, but we're going to have to figure out what to do in May. And then for groups, you've got kind of this, and high, middle, and low is not like my favorite way to talk about it, but you have a group of kids that have more advanced skills in this area. You have some kids that are probably kind of like in the grade level range because they haven't been instructed on this yet. And then you have some students who are maybe missing some foundational skills, right? So as you move forward, if you had this class, you would want to be thinking about that. So I'm just going to actually let you look at that since the sound is still going on. Take a look at that and see if you have any questions about these other trends. So as we mentioned before, that there are some foundational objectives that they're doing okay on, right? We have some trends and things that they all might need help with. And then there's some common misunderstandings, and we can't, this is not here in this data, but it's on a different handout that we're not going to take the time to look at. But if we look at the wrong answers, and we'll talk about this more later, we might be able to see a trend in why kids are not understanding something. So in this case, they answered a measure that might be volume when they were supposed to be word length or something like that, so we know that they have some confusion there. So we're going to start, no we're not, sorry. So we're going to be thinking about these 3 things today with your own data. So the first thing is what to teach. So what are those 13 objectives that you're going to teach starting next week? What to remediate and review, and then how to do that, right? Because we are teaching a new objective each day, so how are you going to work those things that kids really need review on into your lesson? And then do you have any students who need some enrichment, who did really, really well on this pre-assessment and are going to need something extra from you so that they can stay engaged in moving forward in their own learning? I think we're going to not think about that with these fake kids. We're going to move on to our own data. So you have probably not entered your data into the OSAT yet, but we're going to do that today. And I just got some clarification on that in that phone call that I just made. And once you do, you are going to see the screen is going to be like this. And it's actually kind of going to help you see the red means that less than 50%, I think, of kids have mastered that, and the green is more than a certain percentage. So it kind of color codes itself to help you make some decisions, but you also can use your own judgment as you're making those decisions. Yeah.
My students just finished taking their assessment today. 5 of them still haven't finished, so I haven't graded yet.
Yes, so we're going to use this session to do whatever you need to do to, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Albert, and then I forgot. Mikey. Yeah.
I just had a quick question. There's also some students that I did the diagnostic test with that didn't finish certain parts of the problem. So that's one different situation that I'm having. And then the other situation is that we just got new kids into the classroom.
Right. Yeah.
So do I put them at NA? Do I put them at 0?
Yeah, so we were talking about this earlier. I was talking about with Gabriella. So if they have not, they didn't finish part of the problem, sort of because like it was too hard for them, they kind of were like, I can't do this, I'm not finishing it, then you can score it according to whatever score we get based on what they have on the paper. If they didn't finish it because they didn't have time, I would give them tomorrow, either during AIT or during, have them sit in the back during your math block to finish it, but tomorrow should be the last, like after tomorrow, no more unless they come in new. For kids who come in new, you do need to give them the assessment, and again, I would do that tomorrow. Because if we get much past tomorrow, then the data isn't really diagnostic anymore, right? It's more an assessment of what you've already been teaching. Did I answer both questions?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
How does it work for I know because I did entering 5th, and so there's some questions that, like they did okay, like they did the multiplication or the division, but they didn't do the area model or do the whatever, they didn't do the task getting in. Is it all or nothing, or is it partial, and how do you enter in partial?
Yeah, so there is, we'll go ahead and talk about this now since the question just came up. So there is a rubric, and the rubric is, I think it says on the side, on the assessment, it says like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And
But it's also split to MK and E.
Right, so, and MK is mathematical knowledge and E is expressing their understanding. Evidence, sorry, thank you. When you go into your tracker, which unfortunately I cannot log into because my login's not working, if I'm not mistaken, you are actually going to enter it as one overall score for both. So you would have to, I guess, average the two scores and enter it that way. If I'm wrong about that, let me know and you can enter them both. But like if they have a 1 in one area and a 4 in another, then that's 2.5, right? You do, when you enter the data in the tracker though, you do need to enter it as a percentage out of 100. So in other words, a 1 is 25%, a 2 is 50%, a 3 is 75, and a 4 is 100. And the reason for that is the way the growth goal is calculated is on a 100-point scale, and so we just have to enter the data as a percentage out of 100. So whip out your calculator, yeah.
And I had a quick question. As we're grading the diagnostic for MK and the E, where do you find the rubric to know where to grade?
Oh, thank you. I navigated away from that, so I was busy caught up in the 100% thing. In your ISAT, the rubric should be explained in your ISAT. So if you scroll through the ISAT for each section, it will tell you. I think it's at the very last page tells you what each score is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the rubric just goes 0 through 4, and it combines the MK and the E. So should we, while we're grading them on the paper, should we be using the two scores, or should we just be basing, like going off the rubric, which is just 0 to 4 overall? Because it breaks it down like 0 is like nothing of this or this.
Right. So does anyone have can anyone pull up the tracker for me right now since I can't see it? So it is just 1 score per objective.
I can.
Yeah, it's just 1 score per objective.
So you just put,
yeah.
would you out of 4?
If I were, so here is what I would do. Let me think. So what Abby told me, who's the person who's like in charge of all this, is to combine the two scores. So you need to eventually come up with 1 score overall to enter into the tracker. I think for your purposes for teaching it, it is important that you know the difference between their mathematical knowledge and their expression of, it just stands for expression. But, so I'm going to say, this is what we're going to do, give them the rubric on the ISAT though is all combined, right?
Yeah.
So go with the rubric on the ISAT, give them 1 overall score. Thank you for clarifying that for me. And then for yourself, maybe if there's a big difference, just make yourself a little note on the assessment that that's like hugely different between they answered the problem correctly, but they didn't express their understanding at all or whatever. But give them 1 overall score based on that rubric that's on the ISAT. Any other questions about entering data as long as we're talking about it? Those are my...
So we're grading it based on that document?
The rubric that's at the bottom of the ISAT, yeah. And it's something like, basically to get a 4, you have to have the answer has to be correct, and they have to explain it.
It has all that on there? I've never seen that.
Do you want me to?
It's all the way bottom. Yeah, it's all the way bottom. Yeah. Charlie has it pulled up, right? Yeah. So, looks like this. So 1 is both the answer and the explanation are incorrect. 2 is the answer is correct, but the explanation is incorrect or minimal, and it works on up to step 4. So just use that as your guide. And thank you for working with me as I try to clarify my own understanding of this, because this is a new assessment this summer. Last summer was all multiple choice, so we had no idea whether kids were getting things right or wrong, right? So what we're going to do with this time right now is go ahead and enter your data. And if that's the first thing that you need to do, score it, enter it, we'll all help each other. And then if you do get all your data entered, you can start making some decisions about what to teach or not teach. And to indicate that, you're going to be checking off the boxes at the top. So if the box is checked, that indicates you have decided you are going to teach that objective this summer because the majority of students haven't mastered it, whatever. If you uncheck the box, that means you are not going to be teaching that objective this summer. So the students' growth goals are going to be calculated only based on the objectives that you select. So obviously, what's that?
You said we can only pick 13.
You're going to pick the 5 that you already taught this week, right? Because you've done all your plans and all that. So leave those checked, and then pick 13 more, because we have 13 more days of instruction. Yeah. And we actually probably have 12 days into the assessment, but go ahead and pick 13 just to be safe.
And they're kind of in order of like the way you teach them. So like if you uncheck a few, and then there's like a huge space, you teach like the one before the space, and then immediately after the other one.
Right. So you want to look at your ISAT and think about if there's like 3 objectives that are linked, and one of them kids kind of got, you probably still want to teach that because it's linked to the other.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll be here to help you with that. Yeah.
So as we're checking and unchecking them, it's all the we checked all the lesson plans that we have,
Right.
and this is the 13 more.
Right, exactly. And you're going to make that decision based on what your data looks like after you enter it all and think about it. And of course, that doesn't need to be done until 10 p.m. tomorrow, so you also can talk to the other people in your collaborative if you want them to help you make the decision, your CMA. Like, we can all help you with that. But if you're super efficient, you've already entered your data, you can work your time. Yeah.
And
Thank you for asking all the questions, because it reminds me what I need to say. Yeah.
I think the problem I have is that there's one student in particular who doesn't understand most of the concepts. So what if I don't teach that objective anymore and I don't teach the concepts? What do I have to do?
Let's talk one-on-one about that student's particular needs. But in general, we are trying to make a decision based on the needs of the majority of the class, right? So you want to think about what do most kids need, and then if there's 1 or 2 students that are real outliers, we're going to figure out like what can we do in our lessons to help support that child. I'm going to take one more question, and then we're going to start with time.
Kids who haven't shown up for either day of school yesterday or today, do we enter them in as 0? I don't know if Albert asked, but zeros or blanks or?
I would leave it blank, because if they don't come by tomorrow, I'm going to guess that we're maybe going to remove them from the tracker. Yeah. All right, so let's get started working. I am here, Jasmine, I'm going to say you're here to help everybody, right? And we're just going to work on this for about 20 minutes until about 2:55 or so, and then we're going to come together for a few last thoughts before we switch.